What is going on, YouTube Nation and fantasy football owners and football fans everywhere? It is Thursday, September 7th, 2017. It is 5 o'clock on the East Coast, and we are live. Spiky Dash, a.k.a. Chris Pearson, here with you for the Week 1 preview. Football games that count are finally back. It is the moment that we've been waiting for ever since we had our post-draft show earlier in the year and got a great roster, and we've seen training camps and preseason play out, and now finally tonight and heading into the weekend is when games really, truly, honestly matter. And this is where it begins. This is where the quest for a championship really, honestly, and truly begins. So excitement all around, a lot of storylines to follow, a lot of great games this weekend. A lot to discuss in this opening preview. But again, to open, as I did with my ATSD episode last week, we would be remiss if we do not open at least with the game that is not going to be played this weekend because of another oncoming storm system. With Houston, of course, it was Hurricane Harvey, and that was devastating on its own, creating so much flooding, so much destruction in the Rockport, Texas area, flooding the Houston area, most of the state of Texas affected, and the relief efforts continue and are ongoing. And I'm truly amazed and blown away by the numbers and the donations and the support that's come from across the country regarding that situation. In fact, J.J. Watt's fund that I posted a link to has now surpassed $22 million. That is absolutely outstanding, and that just started with a $250,000 goal, and now it's over $22 million. So the outpouring of support for the Houston area has been totally mind-blowing, and it's going to be, I'm sure, an amazing, wild atmosphere this weekend when the Texans host the Jaguars for their season opener. But now we need to think about our friends and family and anyone in the Florida area, and that's not just one area of Florida. That could potentially be the entire state. Hurricane Irma is churning through the Caribbean with 185-mile-an-hour wind gusts, potentially higher. It is expected to strike Florida sometime this weekend, Saturday going into Sunday. Final preparation to be made now. They've already issued mandatory evacuations for the Florida Keys, and there's a hurricane warning along South Florida now. So it is quickly, conditions are quickly going to deteriorate. It's already responsible for at least 8 deaths from what I've heard, maybe even 10. The numbers have changed. I think it's like 10 dead at this point and 23 are upwards injured. The island of Barbuda is totally devastated. 90% of the roads in Antigua are impassable. He said the leader of Barbuda came out and said 100% of the structures are destroyed. Puerto Rico is completely without power. The Virgin Islands were affected, so we offer our thoughts and prayers to anyone in those areas affected by the storm. And then you got Hurricane Jose churning right behind it. You've got Hurricane Katia in the Gulf of Mexico. 3 Atlantic hurricanes going on at the same time now, and 4 in the span of a few weeks. It is clearly the peak of hurricane season, and I personally just keep the entire state of Florida in my thoughts. I've been wearing my Lightning gear all week. I'm wearing my Dolphins gear today, even though they're not playing this weekend because of the storm. I keep Tampa in my thoughts, keep Miami in my thoughts. Anyone I know in the Florida area, I have a friend just moved recently outside the Tampa area, so I hope he's not affected by the storm. I know I have friends in Jacksonville, former classmates, so be on your guard. Be aware. Be safe. If they tell you to leave, leave. Don't stick this one out. This one is already done just scores of damage. So if they tell you to go, go. And people were stocking up on this storm 2 weeks in advance. After seeing what Harvey did to Houston, they know now what this storm is capable of. So be aware and be safe. That's really all that we can ask for. And of course, I'm a member of Dolphin Research Center down in the Florida Keys, and I'm thinking of them all the time. And there's always a crew that stays behind there when a storm hits, so I'm thinking of them all this weekend. So just be safe. Be safe. Be aware. If you have to hunker down, be prepared for it. But if they tell you to go, if you can, go. So long story short, in terms of the NFL, Bucs-Dolphins is not being played this weekend. Now, normally, we rarely, unlike aside from a weather situation like this, we don't have a week one where we have teams on a bye. The bye weeks normally don't kick in until like week 4, week 5 of the season. Well, now we have this unique situation where you're going to have two teams in Tampa Bay and Miami on a bye in week 1 because they're not playing due to the hurricane. So now they're going to have to play for 16 straight weeks. The game was postponed to week 11 because the two teams shared the same bye week. Now, the Dolphins, they didn't want to have that push to that week. They were really pushing the NFL hard to get the game played at a neutral site. And I read on Twitter that places like Pittsburgh or Philadelphia were considered for neutral sites on Sunday, but the NFL decided, you know what, it'd just be best to in the interest of public safety and safety for you guys, just postpone it, move it to that week 11. I know you got to play now 16 straight weeks, but it's for the best. So they acted in interest of safety. So with that in mind, who are we not going to have in our lineups now? Who are we not going to have this week because of this postponement? Well, there's a lot of big names you're not going to have. For the Bucs, you're not going to have Jameis Winston at quarterback. You're not going to have Jacquizz Rodgers as a nice fill-in running back because Doug Martin is suspended for the first 4 games, and now he won't be able to return until week 6 because this game's not being played. So you're not going to have Charles Sims. You're not going to have Mike Evans. That's a big loss for me. I have Mike Evans. Mike Evans is my first-round draft pick. Not going to have him this week, so I got to scramble and play Pierre Garçon in his place instead, unfortunately. Or Deshaun Jackson. For the Dolphins, you're not going to have Jay Ajayi, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills, Jay Cutler. You're not going to have these players this week because of this postponement. So big losses across the board, but thankfully there are plenty of other good games and good options out there you can use to replace these guys. Or if you have good depth on your bench, you can plug in someone for like a Winston. Or if there's guys on the wire that are really have the quarterbacks really good matchups, like Carson Palmer of Arizona, for example. Great matchup against Detroit this week. He could be someone you could use in a pinch. Or even, or you're missing an Ajayi at running back or Evans at wide receiver. There are a lot of still good receivers out there, I'm sure, in a lot of leagues with good matchups you can use to plug in for those spots this week. So, again, no Buccaneers, no Dolphins this week because of the hurricane and that postponement, that game being pushed back to week 11. So, who are we going to have this week? Who can we rely on this week, and who can we not? Well, that's what this show has always been about, figuring out who to play and who not to play. So now we know we're not going to have any Bucs or Dolphins. We got to prepare with our guys that we have in the other matchups that we can potentially take advantage of. So let's dive right into it, starting with tonight's matchup, Chiefs and the Patriots. Big storylines, obviously, in this one, of course, for the Pats. Of course, once again, opening night and the opening of the regular season, defending another Super Bowl title. Big shocker, even though it was one done in the most bizarre ways you can imagine when the Atlanta Falcons choked away a 28-3 lead and allowed New England to come back. Well, that's just the magic and the mystery and the mystique of New England. They just find a way to get the job done. So now tonight, really another banner, opening night again in the season. But the two big storylines that come from this game are, what are these teams now going to look like without two of their big star players, one on each side? The Patriots lost their top target and star wide receiver Julian Edelman in the preseason to a torn ACL. So he's done for the year. But the good thing about that is the Patriots, they have a lot of depth at wide receiver behind Edelman. So they acquired Brandon Cooks in the offseason, was a huge get for New England. Now you're talking about guys like Danny Amendola stepping up, and Chris Hogan is going to be a big name. It's going to step up as well. So still a lot of weapons. And plus their running backs that can catch, like James White or a Deion Lewis, are going to have to step up a lot more. And then with Kansas City, they lose. It's almost kind of becoming, and I hate to say it, it's kind of becoming like a recurring theme. Like Kansas City keeps losing its starting running back for the year. It happened with Jamal Charles a couple of years ago when he tore his ACL in that game against Detroit. Now it happens, though, in the preseason. That was week 1 regular season when it happened to Charles. Now it happens to Spencer Ware, although he tore his PCL and his LCL in his knee. So he's done for the year. In comes Kareem Hunt, the rookie out of Toledo, and now he's going to be expected to carry the load for Kansas City. But you've also got a nice backfield weapon as well in terms of a PPR play in Kendrick West. Now, what's surprising is the Chiefs parted ways with C.J. Spiller at first, and then they re-signed him just like 2 days ago, and today they cut him again today. So they're really doing C.J. Spiller kind of dirty here. I mean, they're really – I don't know why they don't want to keep him on the roster, considering he's a great talent. He's a nice dual-threat back. I don't know. I'm kind of confused at that one. They must really have confidence in Hunt and West to handle all the workload. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep dumping C.J. Spiller. So to me, that was kind of surprising. But you're still going to have a lot of good options in this game tonight. So your obvious plays for the Chiefs, Alex Smith at quarterback. Even though the matchup isn't great with New England, Alex Smith has done well against the Pats in the past, and he's still got a lot of good downfield weapons. So he's at least a solid, QB2 play with one upside potentially, especially if you're in a pinch. Like if you lost Jameis Winston, Alex Smith could be a decent play tonight. I mentioned Kendrick West. You can play him though in PPR leagues. Really not a standard start, but at least in those leagues that allow the points per reception, I think West will be utilized in this backfield this week. Tyreek Hill is obviously a must. He's now the #1 receiver in Kansas City now that Jeremy Maclin has gone to Baltimore. Tyreek Hill now is the guy. I feel like he's going to have a huge breakout season. Of course, Nate and I wanted to draft him on draft night. He went like a round before we wanted him, so that was a big loss. But he's going to have a big game. And, of course, Travis Kelce, one of the more reliable tight ends. This game is going to feature two of the most reliable tight ends you'll find in the NFL. Travis Kelce in Kansas City, and when healthy, Rob Gronkowski in New England. So those guys, are automatic starts regardless. For the Pats, obviously Tom Brady, he's automatic. You start him. Mike Gillislee now comes in as the #1 running back for New England. No more LeGarrette Blount. He's now in Philadelphia. So now Gillislee comes in, who used to be a backup in Buffalo to LaShawn McCoy, and now becomes the main guy. But with New England's running backs, it's really kind of hard to predict what we're going to get on a weekly basis because, again, it's kind of like a juggling act. You don't know who's going to step up and be the main guy. Gillislee obviously is going to get the bulk of the work. But you also got to factor in James White, who I do like in PPR leagues as well. Deion Lewis is going to have, some eventually value, maybe even Rex Burkhead. But the thing of it is, it's like a wheel. Really the only two I really trust are Gillislee and White. Those are really the only two right now that I really, really trust to get solid work. And as for the rest, it's really unpredictable. So just keep that in mind. Brandon Cooks also is obviously a must start. He's going to be the top target there. And now with Edelman out, he's going to get a lot of the work. So I expect a big game tonight from Brandon Cooks as well. And I think you need to start Chris Hogan. Look, he's the biggest beneficiary of Edelman being out. He basically moves up the depth chart. He's going to now get a lot of this work, and he benefits the most from this departure. He's now a solid #2 receiving option, and I think you can start him with confidence and really reap the rewards from that. So I think he is going to have a potentially big game tonight and a big season as long as he stays healthy. And I mentioned Kareem Hunt. But the thing about it is, with Hunt being a rookie, can he prove that he can handle this full NFL workload? Well, I got to admit, I watched him play at Toledo. He was pretty impressive there, and he's shown nice flashes throughout the preseason. But now it's time for him to really step up with Spencer Ware done for the year. So for now, I say a solid #2, but certainly with RB1 upside, I think you can safely start him tonight in this very big game. In terms of the sits, like I said, I mentioned with the Patriots running backs, right now, Gillislee and White, they're the only two that I really trust. The rest of this bunch, I'm talking like guys like Deion Lewis, Rex Burkhead. Rex Burkhead has also been a great pickup for New England. He showed nice flashes in the preseason, but in terms of what his role really is going to be in this offense, I don't think you can consider him really fantasy worthy yet. So I would wait on him until we really see if he has a defined, consistent carved role in this offense. So Lewis, Burkhead, Brandon Bolden, they're rotational guys. They're really not consistent enough and don't have enough value to be consistent options. So I would keep those guys on your bench until we see what kind of role they're going to play. Now Amendola, I mentioned him, but I don't really trust him enough to be a huge fantasy relevance. He's more like the #3 guy. Cooks and Hogan right now are the two guys that I really trust. Amendola has always been kind of the third wheel. He really, he can make good catches every once in a while, but it's just not enough to warrant full-on fantasy relevance. So I really don't trust him enough. To me, Cooks and Hogan are surefire things. Amendola, for now, either a really risky number 3 if you're desperate, or more of a number 4. A very, very risky play, in my opinion. The Chiefs' defense. I own the Chiefs' defense in my league, and normally the Chiefs' defense is a great play. They're a great unit. They tend to make a lot of interceptions. They tend to hold teams down. That's fine. But this week is not an ideal week to play them, and I'm benching them this week. I picked up the Rams defense off the wire because they're playing the Colts this week with Scott Tolzien under center, and I'm pretty sure the Rams are going to give him havoc and total hell, literally. So that's why I'm playing the Rams this week. I do not recommend the Chiefs defense. I don't want to drop the Chiefs DST entirely. I made that mistake last year, and I'm not doing that again. Because I was too worried about their schedule. We want to hold on to them for the long term. They're still going to be an okay unit the rest of the season, but just not this week. Now, I know in the past the Chiefs had that one awesome game against New England, and it stunned everybody. But that happens every once in a while. I think it was just a one-off. I think this is going to be a game where New England really shows its mettle. With a home opener, under the lights, defending Super Bowl champs, they're going to prove it and show that they are that team. So I don't like the Chiefs DST this week. Like I said, there's plenty of streamers out there you can pick up with better matchups, including the Rams, who I do recommend. So, and then really any other Chiefs wide receiver, I don't recommend either. There really isn't much now behind Tyreek Hill since the team let Jeremy Maclin go, and now he's in Baltimore. There really isn't anyone else behind him that can really be a consistent option unless someone else steps up. Really you can't trust guys like a Chris Conley or an Albert Wilson right now. We need to see if there's really going to be a strong number 2, number 3 receiver presence in Kansas City first before we really consider them to be fantasy worthy. So for now, Tyreek Hill is the only Kansas City receiver that you start in your fantasy lineups. Okay, on to the weekend games, the 1 o'clock kicks. Some might say this first one is probably the biggest mismatch of the weekend, and maybe it is on paper, but we'll see. The thing of it is, I hate to say it, but the Cleveland Browns are actually kind of a mystery this season. I mean, they're still going to probably be bad, but not as bad as 1-15 last year because they now have a flashy rookie quarterback in Deshaun Kaiser out of Notre Dame who has looked very impressive in the preseason. They have great weapons at wide receiver now. You still got Isaiah Crowell at running back. You lost your best corner, Joe Hayden. Oh, by the way, he's on their sideline now. Joe Hayden went to Pittsburgh, so Joe Hayden's going to be chomping at the bit to get back at Cleveland. A lot of revenge games this week, too, by the way. That one, Saints-Vikings Monday night with AP. A lot of revenge games. Excuse me. But, so, yeah. But the bottom line is you're going to play the vast majority of your Steelers in this game, obviously. The Browns' defense, we know, is still very shaky. So certainly the Browns have the talent on offense to have a better season, but the defense is still the big question mark. So you're going to play a lot of your Steelers. The obvious trio, these three, play them pretty much automatically. Big Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback, Le'Veon Bell at running back, Antonio Brown at wide receiver. Those three are automatic in your lineup. Set it, forget it. To play those guys. And the Steelers defense. I mean, you're playing, come on, they're facing a rookie quarterback in their first week of the season. That's kind of a no-brainer. Even though Kaiser's been good, I still think you can't afford to sit the Steelers DST in this matchup. For the Browns, I really only trust two guys. That is Isaiah Crowell, running back, and Kenny Britt at wide receiver. To me, those two have really shown the biggest flash. Of course, we know Crowell has been a consistent force throughout the past couple seasons in the backfield. So he's going to get a lot of work. And Britt really is the best of the wide receiver core right now. It's a very thin group. So I think that he's really going to have to be the one that steps up unless we see more from Corey Coleman. So he will be the main guy. But I'm also going to give you a sneaky start here at tight end. I'm going to tell you to start Browns tight end David Njoku. Look, they didn't get rid of one of the best tight ends in the NFL in Gary Barnidge and draft this guy as a first-round pick not to utilize him. I think he's really going to be utilized in the system, especially with Kaiser at quarterback. I think he's going to try to find this guy early and often, especially in the red zone. So I think I think he very much is a low end 1, high end tight end 2 potential here. I really like this guy. I mean, kind of like what with I think Gronk was a first round pick too. You don't go that high for a tight end and not use them right away. Same with O.J. Howard in Tampa, even though not playing this week, and he maybe even Evan Ingram with the Giants. You don't draft tight ends that high if you're not going to utilize them. And since the Browns decided, okay, we're moving on from Gary Barnidge, who has been great for us over the past couple years, this is the guy I want to put our focus on. You use him. I mean, you don't just let him sit on the bench. So that's why I really like him this week and going forward as well. And then the Steelers also get a big player back in Martavis Bryant at wide receiver. He's back. Yes, he is. After that year-long suspension, he is finally back in the league and going to be a big weapon in this Steelers offense. Get him back in your lineup. Solid number 2 receiver option. He's going to have, I think, a big game this week as well and a big play. In terms of the sits, for now, you sit Deshaun Kaiser. You don't play him out of the box. Yes, he's looked great in the preseason. Yes, he earned a starting job rightly. But this is a rookie debut going up against the Steelers. No, I don't trust that. Maybe down the line there'll be times when you can play Kaiser in a pinch, but this isn't the week to do it. Duke Johnson, I don't trust him. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I know normally people think, oh, he's a PPR machine. When? I haven't seen it. Outside of like a desperate play, to me, he just doesn't have much value. He doesn't really get as much of a workload as Crowell does. He's, to me, barely involved in the offense. So I don't see what value he has, and I would not play him until we really start seeing some consistent workload from him, at least in the passing game, because Crowell handles it on the ground, and then he comes in like on third downs and occasionally gets some work, but nothing on a high consistent level. So I don't trust Duke Johnson right now. And I mentioned Corey Coleman, but, I hate to really dub Coleman a bust right now, but he kind of has been because of the off-the-field issues, the injuries. It's kind of derailed his career a bit. There was a lot of hype of him coming out of college and coming to Cleveland, but really he's kind of failed to live up to that hype. So until I really see consistent, really strong play from Corey Coleman, I can't even really recommend him as a number 3 option. More really like a desperate number 4 at this point, until we really see some more consistent play from him and making sure that he can stay on the field as well. Moving on to the Cardinals at the Lions. Again, kind of a mismatch here on paper because the Cardinals, last time these two met, really beat up on Detroit pretty bad. And it's kind of what you might expect in this matchup as well. The Cardinals still have a lot of talent, even though the two vets, Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald, are getting up there in age, and there's speculation whether or not this will be their last season or not. A lot of talk on that, but they still have the young bucket running back in the top pick in a lot of drafts, and that's David Johnson. So those 3 are obviously your must-starts for the Cardinals. Carson Palmer, David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. And again, I mentioned Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer has one of the easiest quarterback schedules through the first couple weeks of the season. The first 4 weeks, he can be used, especially, again, if you don't, like I said, if you don't have Jameis Winston this week because of the cancellation, you can pick up Carson Palmer off the wire and put him in, and he will probably definitely have a very, very big week this week, as we know the Lions' defense is very suspect, and that secondary has kind of always been their weakness. So he's definitely an obvious start, as is David Johnson, of course, and Larry Fitzgerald, always reliable in the Cardinals receiving core. For the Lions, Matthew Stafford, I mean, if you're hurting at quarterback, if you need at least maybe an upside number 2, it's an okay option, but I wouldn't really trust him unless, if you have better options on your roster. Like I have Derek Carr and Matthew Stafford on my roster, but I'm playing Carr this week because I think he has the better matchup going up against Tennessee. I don't like the matchup for Stafford against Arizona. So, I mean, if you're in a pinch or you're in a 2-quarterback league and you have to play Stafford, then yeah, I mean, he might get some targets or maybe some garbage time if the Lions get down big. But outside of that, I don't think he's a great option, but certainly one you can use if you're in a pinch. Amir Abdullah, running back, he's going to be the main guy. Hard to see what role Theo Riddick's going to play. in the backfield. The big concern with Riddick is how healthy are the wrists. It kept him out in a couple games in preseason, and we need to really see, is he going to actually be, majorly in the backfield with a big role, or is Abdullah going to handle the rock a lot more? So the Lions didn't really do anything in free agency or the draft of the running back. So the big thing is, Abdullah's going to be asked to work, and I own Amir Abdullah, and I have to start him this week because I really don't have any better options. I'm riding with Lynch from Oakland and Abdullah, and then my Ravens are on the bench because they're playing Cincinnati, and I don't love that matchup. So so that's why I think, Abdullah's going to have at least a decent outing, maybe not a great one, but certainly at least RB2 numbers, and I think you can still utilize him. Golden Tate, obviously, to me, is an obvious play. The number one option there in Detroit. I think you got to put him in. And I'm going to say Eric Ebron, but only if he plays. That the hamstring has been a concern all offseason, all preseason. It's been a concern for him. Is he going to actually play? So that's going to be a big thing as well. But if he plays, I think you have to play Eric Ebron. But I'm also going to say to start the other Lions wide receivers. And I know that the Cardinals secondary is kind of rough, but they're going to have at least some opportunities. I feel like Stafford's going to have to throw a lot in this game because, again, the Lions are going to be mainly down, I think, at least at some point in this game. So Stafford's going to have to throw at some point. I like Marvin Jones. I like what I've seen from Kenny Golladay, the rookie out of Northern Illinois. I really like what I've seen from him in the preseason. Jones, to me, this week is more of a wide receiver 3, but certainly a little bit of upside. Golladay is kind of a wide receiver 4 if you're in a pinch. And I really like his upside moving forward. It would not surprise me if Golladay eventually maybe even surpasses Marvin Jones if he keeps playing very well, which is a possibility. So I really like what I've seen from him. Fits well in the system. Very, very nice. And I will say to start John Brown, but again, anytime you play John Brown, it comes with a risk. As long as he is fully healthy and shows no recurring issues from these sickle cell problems, or it's a hamstring, or it's a groin, or whatever, that's the risk you carry when you own John Brown. At least a solid wide receiver 3, but certainly the upside is there for wide receiver 2 production from John Brown if he can stay on the field. That's really the big thing with him. So I will say to go with him. For the sits, again, I mentioned Theo Riddick, and until we really see him play on the field when the wrists aren't an issue, I can't really recommend him as a big-time play. In the meantime, he's just an RB3 or a flex. I really, very, very risky until we really see what his role is going to be and if he's going to stay on the field. That to me, is the risk you have with Theo Riddick. The Cardinals tight ends, they're really just not utilized a lot in this offense. The receiving core and the running backs, they get the bulk of the work. I wouldn't play any Cardinals tight ends. And I'm a little bit worried about the Cardinals DST. Normally it'd be a great matchup, but here's the thing. The Lions are at home, and they tend to play a little bit better at home. That kind of worries me just a little bit. You can still play them if you're desperate, if you need, maybe if they're on your wire in your league and you have, and you just lost like the Dolphins or the Bucks, or you don't want to play the Chiefs this week, then maybe you put them in there in a pinch. But I don't think they'll score as many points as people might think they do. I think there's just a little bit of a risk, but they should still have a decent week, but not like an elite week by any stretch. Texans hosting the Jaguars. Obviously, as I mentioned in the intro, this is going to be a very emotional game because, again, first game in Houston after Harvey. That the crowd is going to be jacked. The environment's going to be intense. This is going to be off the charts. This is going to be a big-time game. The Texans are going to want to win it for Houston. The Houston's strong, and they're going to want to go out there and really, figuratively, of course, but hit the Jaguars in the mouth. Like, they're really going to come out firing on all cylinders and be very, very strong. So your obvious starts in this game, though. For Jacksonville, there's really only a few options that you can start in this game. Leonard Fournette, the running back, there was a bit of a concern with his foot as an issue, but for the most part, it looks like all signs are pointing to him playing this week. So you want to, again, monitor just to be safe, but it looks like he's going to play. So Leonard Fournette is a go. And then the 2 other receivers, Allen Robinson, Marquise Lee, they're now the 2 main receiving targets for Blake Bortles at quarterback. So they're still safe plays that you can play those guys. For the Texans, Lamar Miller, running back, main option, main workload. Showed it last year that you can handle it here in Houston. Finally being utilized as the main running back, which Miami never did. But nice to see that he's getting the workload and handling it. So great there. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, nuke. Yep, you start him. Obviously, CJ Fedorowicz, tight end, one of the more underrated tight ends in the NFL. But Fedorowicz is a target, especially near the red zone. They look for him a lot. I used him briefly at the end of late last season. I really reaped the rewards, scoring a lot of touchdowns and getting targets. So he's a nice play. And the Texans defense this matchup, obviously, because hello, it's Jacksonville, it's Blake Bortles. He sucks. Chad Henne's no better. So again, death, taxes, Jaguars suck. So we know the drill. Other starts, I will mention the Texans quarterback Tom Savage, but only in 2 quarterback leagues. This is a great matchup, and really Savage should take full advantage of this matchup. Even though if I believe though that Deshaun Watson I think is going to start sooner rather than later. But given the matchup, to me, Savage is a decent QB2, QB3 option. So I still think he's an okay play if you're in a pinch. So again, say if you lost Winston, this is a great matchup to utilize Tom Savage if you're in a pinch. And I'm going to mention another name, Bruce Ellington, another guy that's been a stud this preseason. Look, Hopkins can't catch all the passes, and so someone's got to step up with all the injuries and suspensions throughout the receiving core, like Will Fuller. He's got the broken collarbone. He's going to be out a while, and Jalen Strong is suspended for the first game of the season. So someone's got to step up, and I believe that Bruce Ellington is going to be that guy. So I really like him here as a decent number 3 option in a pinch. There's a lot of sits, though, in this game. This game might not be pretty from a whole perspective. I'm going to say sit the other Texans running backs, Alfred Blue and Donta Foreman. Both are really dealing with coming off of injuries right now, so they're kind of shaky. Their status is still kind of up in the air. Don't really expect either guy to be very productive this week, so I would not recommend either one of those guys. Again, until we see more of not only with their health, but what their role is going to be in the backfield going forward. Jalen Strong, of course, suspended for the first game of the year. Don't play him. Again, Will Fuller, broken collarbone, out at least 2 to 3 months. So either keep him on your bench, or if you can't afford the roster space, drop him for somebody else. I'm not really – and then in terms of the other Jaguars, Blake Bortles, I don't care who plays a quarterback for Jacksonville. I really don't. Bortles and Chad Henne have been laughably atrocious in the preseason. You're not playing him against J.J. Watt and the Texas defense in the Texans home opener in a city recovering from one of the worst storms in United States history. No, you're not doing it. So no way. Same with Allen Hurns at wide receiver. Look, he's really just lost all of his fantasy value due to poor productivity, injuries, just not there. So I wouldn't recommend him. And Mercedes Lewis, tight end for Jacksonville, just is not utilized enough to really be fantasy relevant. So I would not use him either. Okay, that one's the postponed one. Raiders-Titans. This is my favorite game this week. This is to me is the fantasy jackpot. Cha-ching, cha-ching. Because this is going to have – you're going to start a lot of your players in this game. I feel like this is going to be – come on. It's two of the better younger quarterbacks in the league, both coming off of serious leg injuries. Derek Carr, broken leg. Marcus Mariota, torn ACL. Or did he break his leg too? I think they both did. Something to that effect. So, but they are coming back, and they have plenty of weapons. Carr with his familiar weapons, Mariota with his new crew of weapons in Tennessee. This is going to be a fun, I think, high-scoring game. I'm really looking forward to this one. to watch this week. So many storylines here. Again, Carr versus Mariota. Marshawn Lynch, what is he going to do in his first game in Oakland? What is Titans wide receiver Eric Decker going to do in his first game in a Titans uniform? What about the rookie Corey Davis from Western Michigan? Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to play? What's he going to do if he plays for Tennessee? So many good storylines and potential for high fantasy points in this matchup. So that's why this is my game to watch this week. For the Raiders, obviously the obvious guys, Derek Carr. He's been my stud at least last year and been there before, but got off waivers one year. Last year was my starter most of the year and was exactly a stud until it went down with the injury. He's my guy, and I'm going to go with him again, especially in this matchup. Marshawn Lynch, I got him. I've had him before when he was in Seattle, and like his nickname implies, beast mode. I'm excited to see what he's going to do, especially with one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Even though he's 31 years old and had a year away from the league, I want to see what he can do with this team. So I'm excited to see that. I think you start him. This is start your weapons. I like also, though, but I'm also going to say DeAndre Washington, the backup running back, is also a good choice in PPR because obviously they're not going to use Lynch on every down. They're going to use him, maybe even Jalen Richard on the PPR on the third down, passing down. So I would recommend, but I think Washington's a safer play in PPR leagues. And obviously they got to start two receiving studs, Marty Cooper and Michael Crabtree. Those two guys, set it and forget it. It's a given. For the Titans, Marcus Mariota, obviously, must-start option. DeMarco Murray, running back, yes. As long as he's healthy, you play him. Eric Decker. I think out of the box, Eric Decker has to be the number one weapon for Tennessee. It might be Corey Davis later on down the line, or maybe even Rashard Matthews. But we're finally talking – it finally happened. In Tennessee, we're finally talking about reliable, consistent receivers in Tennessee. Oh, my. I mean, it finally happened. Because we make the joke year after year, who's the number one receiver in Tennessee? They haven't had one since Kevin Dyson or whoever. We make the joke every year. Who is it? Well, hopefully now it's going to be at least Eric Decker. Maybe then you get Corey Davis involved and Matthews. But Eric Decker, I think, being the veteran presence, has to be the main guy. So I think he's going to get a lot of targets here, and I think you have to start him. And, of course, Delanie Walker, one of the more reliable tight ends in the NFL, he's an obvious start as well. But I will say also, I think you can start Rashard Matthews this week. The hamstring is an issue with Corey Davis. We don't even know what his status is for this week. We don't even know if he's going to play this week. So monitor that, of course. But if he doesn't, then Rashard Matthews, I think, is a very good fantasy play this week. He's going to get targets. For me, Matthews is definitely a low-end 2 and high-end wide receiver 3, and the upside is there to potentially have a really good game in this matchup. So because of that uncertainty, I think you have to sit Corey Davis. I would not play him even if he's declared active for the game. I wouldn't play him right away. I want to see him where the hamstring is really a non-issue because those soft tissue injuries can linger for a long time, especially with a running back or a wide receiver. So that worries me a bit. Certainly, I like Corey Davis's upside and his potential going forward because of his playmaking ability, his touchdown ability. He was like a touchdown machine at Western Michigan. But now we want to see him do that in the NFL, but not have this injury linger. So for now, I would wait on Corey Davis, see if that is really a non-issue. And if it is, then maybe more of a risky wide receiver 4 play. But I really wouldn't make him as a starter right out of the box. And then Jared Cook, I know this is a great acquisition by Oakland, and Oakland does tend to utilize their tight ends sometimes, but I really want to see how productive he may or may not be in this offense first. I want to see if the Raiders are really going to utilize Jared Cook in this offense before I really recommend him as a strong play. Right now, at this point, to me, more of a desperate tight end 2, not an elite play right out of the box. The Eagles are at Washington. I don't know how to feel about this one. This one to me, has a little bit of storylines, but not really like a whole lot. It's a rivalry, certainly. It's an NFC East rivalry. It's a big matchup in that regard. But neither really one of these teams thrills me all that much. I'm really disappointed in the Eagles because I feel like they're really kind of wasting Carson Wentz here a bit. everyone's saying, oh, second year, breakout season, stud, step out of the way. He's going to be a star. Pump your brakes on that. I don't see it because the talent they're putting around him doesn't scream epic, at least not to me. I think the Eagles are going to have another tough year this year. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey is great when he's healthy. I mean, if he can stay on the field for all 16 games in a season, yeah. But has that happened, I think, even once in his career? Not that I can recall. Torrey Smith is a bust and a half. I mean, Torrey Smith was only successful in Baltimore because Joe Flacco likes to chuck the ball down the field nearly 40, 50 times a game because the Ravens have had no run game. I mean, so it's like, that's the only reason he was successful in Baltimore, because Joe Flacco has a cannon for an arm. And in San Francisco, you knew he was going to suck because San Francisco has had no quarterback probably since Steve Young. So Torrey Smith is an absolute disgrace. Nelson Aguilar, my gosh, what a bust. Why is he still on the Eagles roster? He's been an absolute disgrace. I can't believe probably the worst fantasy mistake I've ever made, drafting him as a rookie to be my number 3 wide receiver. Boy, I'll never make that mistake again. Holy crap, that was an absolute disgrace. I know that was like channeling Jim Mora there, but that's what it was. Nelson Aguilar if Torrey Smith's a bust and a half, Nelson Aguilar is 3 times that. I mean, an absolute disgrace. And then you sign LeGarrette Blount, and that's all well and good, but he's not going to have the rock the majority of the game. Everyone's saying this is the season the Eagles turn it around and get competitive in the NFC East. I don't think so. You still got the Giants to worry about with their talent. You still got Dallas there to contend, even though Dallas is going to regress. They're not going to have Dallas' great record from last season. They're going to regress a little bit. And you still got Washington, who's got a lot of playmakers. So I don't see this resurgence from Philadelphia. I just don't see it. So this game to me doesn't scream, exciting. But for fantasy purposes, there are a few guys that you can play that might give you some benefit. So for the Eagles, I think you can play LeGarrette Blount in this game. Again, I think Washington's secondary actually is quite good. Hello, Josh Norman. So I'm weary about that even too. So I think Blunt's going to get a lot of work in this game, and I think he's going to at least have strong RB2 value. And Darren Sproles is still a great play, especially in PPR leagues, because that's his role. That's his third down back role, and I think he's going to still utilize that a lot in this offense. And Zach Ertz, one of the more reliable tight ends in the NFL as well, I think he will be utilized, especially again in the red zone. So I think you can play him as well. And for Washington, Kirk Cousins, again, very underrated, but certainly he can put up the big numbers. And I think this is a very good matchup playing at home in front of the home crowd. I think he's going to feed off of that and have a very strong week. The running backs, I like both the Washington running backs. Rob Kelly, used to be called Fat Rob. Not really much anymore from what I've heard. He's lost some weight in this training camp and off season, so he's getting better. So I think you can use him at least as an RB2 play. Chris Thompson can be a strong RB3 or a flex, but especially a greater play in PPR leagues because he's very much utilized in this offense. The wide receivers here. The wide receiver core in Washington seems to get better by the year. Yeah, they let Deshaun Jackson go to Tampa Bay, but you know what? You got Terrell Pryor there now, the former Cleveland Brown. I think he's going to get a ton of targets in this offense. I think he's going to be an obvious start. Jamison Crowder is coming on strong. Had a great year last year, and I think he's now going to be a guy that you can put in your lineups and not worry about. And Jordan Reed, again, when he's healthy, he's had a lot of health concerns, but as long as he plays, he's going to be one of the more reliable tight ends in the NFL. So I think you have to play him as well. Now, I will say, again, I mentioned this again, when he is healthy, Alshon Jeffrey is not bad, and he's very, very good for fantasy purposes as well when he is healthy. So as long as he's healthy and plays, he's a very nice option this week. I have a low end 1, high end 2. Certainly someone you can put in your lineup and rely on because I think he's going to get a ton of targets in this offense, and as long as he's out there, you play him. I think that's pretty much an obvious. Anyone else though in this game though, you sit. I I don't want to say you put out Wentz there yet. Give this offense time to really gel. Let's see what this Eagles offense does first. What kind of team are we really going to get? So is it going to be even functional considering this group around him? Until this offense really shows a pulse this season, I really fully can't recommend Wentz as even a QB2. Very, very risky. I don't really want to put him in that spot until I see a pulse in this offense. And again, Torrey Smith, you know better. I mean, it's just he's a headache. And again, Nelson Aguilar, I mentioned him. I've already ran enough on him. And the other one is for Washington side of things is Josh Doxson. And now, Doxson is a TCU grad. I'm a TCU fan, and I've shown that. And I've really been rooting for him to get on the field and really make an impact, shake off all these injuries that he's had that have kind of been derailing his career so far, especially with the Achilles issue that hampered him all of last season. But until that really happens where he can get on the field, I really can't even recommend him as a number 3. But, boy, I'm really hoping he makes it back and that he gets on the field soon because I really want to see what he can do, especially in this offense. So, for now, I cannot recommend him. The other one is Samaje Perine. Maybe not right now, but later on down the line. I want to see what is his role going to be. He's kind of stacked in this group of running backs, and he's very, very stacked behind Kelly, behind Thompson. He's a rookie. What is his role going to be? But I would not be surprised though, because of the upside he has and what he's shown in the preseason. I would not be surprised if he ends up getting more work sooner rather than later. So, but for now, keep him on your bench, keep him stashed, keep him reserved, keep an eye on him. Not put him in your lineup just yet. Ravens and Bengals, another division rivalry in the AFC North. The big storyline here, of course, is Joe Flacco. Is he going to play? What's his status? He missed all of preseason with this nagging back issue, and what's his status going to be this week? So that's really the big question mark coming into this game. And, of course, also the running back situation in Baltimore as well, with Kenneth Dixon out for the year with a knee issue of his own. Now steps in Terrence West, and they acquired Danny Woodhead in the offseason to help out with the passing down. So, and I think Baltimore even signed some running backs off the practice squad or assigned them to the practice squad. So what are their, are they going to have an impact on this roster? So a lot to think about in this game, but there are guys you can certainly play in this game, but other guys that really you can't because they just don't get involved enough in their respective offenses. For the Ravens, the running backs in this matchup, again, I don't love the matchup considering it's tough, but if you're in a pinch at running back, if you need like an RB2 or an RB3, West and Woodhead aren't bad options by any stretch, but if you have better options than them, I would play them over those guys, like what I'm doing this week. Excuse me. And Woodhead has been bothered by a hamstring injury, for a couple weeks, so that he suffered in preseason. So what's his health status going to be going into this week as well? That's also a big question mark. So Woodhead's a nice PPR play as long as he's healthy. Standard leagues, though, more of a risky 3 or 4. West is a borderline 2 or 3, but I'm not thrilled with the matchup. Now, you can play these guys in a pinch, but if you have better options, I would play them over West and Woodhead. But the Ravens receivers, of course, obviously I love in this matchup. Jeremy Maclin, Mike Wallace. I love those two in this matchup as long as Flacco's under center because, as I mentioned, Flacco likes to throw the ball deep. He's got that cannon arm, and he hits his receivers often. So I really like those two. And I'll even say tight end Ben Watson because the Ravens like to utilize their tight ends, even though they've had the injury bug hit their tight ends hard, whether it's Dennis Pitta or Crockett Gilmore or whoever. I think Max Williams even had injury issues. Now Ben Watson's got to step up and be that guy to take the top role. So they do utilize their tight ends, and I think you can play him in this matchup. For the Bengals, Andy Dalton, I think, is at least a decent QB2 play. Maybe the upside isn't there, but again, if you're in a pinch, again, say you lost Winston because of the cancellation, then I think Dalton is someone you can put in there. he's going to have to throw at some point in this game, and I think you can definitely utilize him in this matchup. Jeremy Hill, though, is a bit of a question mark at running back with the ankle issue that he suffered in preseason, but as long as he plays, I think you play Jeremy Hill because we know he's going to get the bulk of the work for now. Certainly, the rookie Joe Mixon is breathing down his neck to get more carries and be more involved, but I think for now, as long as Jeremy Hill is healthy, you play him. A.J. Green, obviously, is a must-start automatic. And same with Tyler Eifert, again, at tight end, one of the more reliable tight end options. As long as he's healthy, you play him. But I'm going to say that Mixon could really actually be a very sneaky start. I have a feeling he's going to get more touches, not only really in this game, but really as the season goes on. I think in due time, he will probably take over the starting role because, again, Hill has been beset by injuries. Gio Bernard is coming off a torn ACL of his own. So I think Mixon's going to try so hard to step in right away and try to really take that lead role. So in my eyes, to me, at least a solid number 3 or even a flex play this week if you play the flex spot. I think Mixon is something you can put in right there right away and I think really get good productivity out of it. I think he's going to be really getting a lot of touches in this game, especially if Hill doesn't play or if he didn't get a whole lot of work because he's banged up. Then I think Mixon is going to take full advantage of that. As for the sits, Flacco, I can't really trust someone who didn't play a single snap all preseason long. To me, that's just a little bit worrisome. Let's see him in actual action first before we really get a sense of where he's at physically. So don't put him in right away. Monitor that situation. I really wouldn't throw him out there just yet. Rashad Perriman. Talk about wasted potential. Is he even healthy yet? Is he even going to play? His status, it seems like on a week-to-week basis, is really up in the air, and really he's been a walking injury his entire career. So until we see him on the field, I can't recommend him as a play. Same with Gio Bernard. Slowly and painfully he's becoming more relevant in the Cincinnati offense, and it's tough. But you really think about it, he's never going to be the same after that ACL. So I can't recommend him right now. And the other receivers behind A.J. Green, like Brandon LaFell, Tyler Boyd of the Bengals, don't get cute. I mean, as long as A.J. Green is healthy, which at times he wasn't last year, he missed a lot of the year. But if he's healthy, he's going to be a target monster. Those two guys really, they don't get enough really targets to even monitor, to even warrant number 3 status at least in fantasy. So I wouldn't recommend either of those guys. Falcons at the Bears. The big thing in this one is start your Falcons, and really the only Bear you can trust is Jordan Howard. That's pretty much there's really not much to say about this one. The Bears are going to be a circus show all season because they just lost their top receiver in Cameron Meredith for the year with the torn ACL as well. Now your number 1 receiver is Kevin White, and he's been a walking injury most of his career. Behind that, there's really not much. And your quarterback is either going to be Mike Glennon or a rookie in Mitch Trubisky. So it's going to be a Festivus, really, with Chicago. And Atlanta is just, to me, they're just going to dominate. Atlanta, of course, is coming off the loss in the Super Bowl. They're going to play with a huge chip on their shoulder all season. They're going to want to come out right away week 1 and show their dominance and force it on Chicago. So this probably is going to be one of the most one-sided matchups of the week. Falcons, the guys really to start, the obvious choices. Matt Ryan at quarterback. Devontae Freeman at running back. I'll even say those start Tevin Coleman in PPR leagues is a great play, even though maybe even standard is definitely an RB3, but certainly with RB2 upside because he gets involved a lot in the offense. Julio Jones, obviously, as long as he's healthy. And the Falcons defense, you're going to start them, obviously, because, again, the Bears quarterback, it's ripe for the picking. So, again, the only Bear you can really trust is Jordan Howard at running back. I mean, they just released Jeremy Langford, for gosh sake. So, really, I don't even know who, the backup is Benny Cunningham. I mean, that tells you all you need to know about the Bears' backfield. I'm also going to say, though, the only other start I recommend is Mohamed Sanu. Being the number 2 wide receiver in Atlanta's offense, that isn't exactly a bad gig, really. He's going to still get a lot of targets. You could do really worse as a wide receiver 3, but certainly Sanu has low and wide receiver 2 upside. He's still going to get a lot of balls thrown his way. Jones can't get all of them, so certainly he's playable. So I think you can go ahead and start him. But any other Bears besides Jordan Howard, you sit. You're not playing Mike Glennon. That's obvious. Benny Cunningham, not even worth a look in PPR. Bears' best receivers, Kevin White, never been a number 1 before, been a walking injury. Deion Sims barely uses a tight end. Right now, you just can't trust any of those Bears guys. And really, the other Falcon, the Falcon that you really can't trust is their tight end, Austin Hooper, because really, he's not very utilized all that much. They haven't really, if you think about it, the Falcons really not had a fantasy productive, consistent tight end since Tony Gonzalez. They're used occasionally, but not on a consistent basis. So move on from that. Don't use him. Jets at Bills. You want to talk about another mismatch? Well, this is another one of them. Putting it mildly, we have 2 ends of the spectrum this year in terms of, I believe this is ESPN statistics. The Patriots are favored in every game this season. Every game. They're favored to go, so the Patriots are projected to go 16-0. The Jets, on the other hand, are underdogs in every game this season. They are not favored in a single game this year. So 0-16, joining the Detroit Lions could certainly be a possibility. The Jets are going to be laughably bad. That's worse than Chicago. They're just going to be on a whole nother level. It is going to be, and you see this, any under Jets, obvious names, none. There's none, because really, if you think about it, there's really no Jet you can trust in fantasy. I mean, it's just going to be awful watching them play. But for the Bills, Tyrod Taylor, as long as he plays, I don't know yet if he's out of the concussion protocol. I've heard different things. I've heard him practicing, somewhat not. So keep tabs on that. But if Tyrod Taylor plays, then he's obviously a must start this week. Same with LaShawn McCoy at running back. He's going to have a big week. I'll say even Charles Clay at tight end because, again, threat in the red zone. The Bills use that, and they utilize him. So you got to go with that. And then, of course, the Bills defense is going to have a great week against this horribly inept Jets offense. I will say, though, since even though there are no obvious Jet starts, I think one Jet you can start in a pinch is Bilal Powell. A bit of a surprise maybe due to the matchup, but unless the Jets trail late in games, which really could happen a lot, the Jets aren't going to be really a throwing team majorly, but it might happen again in garbage time. But Powell's going to get his share of the work on the ground. If you're desperate, he's at least a decent RB3 or a flex play if you're in a pinch. Not a recommended full-on start like an RB2, but if you play 3 running backs in your league or if you're looking for a flex spot, then certainly Powell is potentially worthy of that because he also does get involved in the passing game time to time. Matt Forte won't be in on every passing down, I don't think. But certainly he's going to be a desperate option if you need it. I'm also going to say, though, keep an eye on another Buffalo Bill that I think is going to have an impact on the run, another rookie. Zay Jones, the wide receiver, the rookie out of East Carolina. I think he's potentially could end up being the Bills' number 1 wide receiver this season because, again, Sammy Watkins is gone. He's now an LA Ram. Jordan Matthews, who they acquired in the trade, has a chest issue, a broken sternum, and so he's going to be out for a while. Jones could see a lot of targets in this matchup, but Matthews doesn't play. So for now, a decent number 3 fantasy wide receiver, but certainly his stock could rise with time because he might take over that lead role. And actually, I'll give you one more Jet because he's kind of in the role you would want to have with some fantasy relevance. That's wide receiver Robbie Anderson. he's now the default number 1 wide receiver because Quincy Enunwa is done for the year with that nagging neck injury. So you can use him as at least a number 3 or a 4 if you're in a pinch or if you're desperate. He's going to get tons of targets because he's the top option. So because of that alone, he's at least serviceable, but not like a recommended play. But at least if you're in a pinch at wide receiver, you need a replacement option for, say, Mike Evans or Devont Parker or Jarvis Landry. Robbie Anderson could be your guy. So either one of those guys, whether it be Jones or Anderson, could be serviceable number 3 options for your team this week. In terms of the sits, I mentioned Jordan Matthews. I wouldn't trust him yet until we see what he does in this offense. And he's also questionable with that cracked sternum anyway. So keep him on your bench for now. See what happens first. Again, I mentioned the Jets quarterback, Josh McCown. You're probably going to play any Jets quarterback all season, really, honestly. But you're definitely not throwing McCown out here, especially against this strong defensive unit. And Matt Forte, I mentioned him. He's lost the starting job to Powell anyway, and he's really just not worth the headache anymore. All right, that's the 1 o'clock games. Now we are into the afternoon and the evenings and the Monday as well. So the afternoon games. Colts at the Rams, a.k.a. the Scott Tolzien show. Actually, what's interesting, I saw this stat on Twitter. This is very interesting to me. This is a matchup of 2 quarterbacks that have never won an NFL game. Can you believe that? Never won an NFL game. That is certainly a mind-boggling statistic. So either Scott Tolzien or Jared Goff is going to get their first NFL win this weekend. Who would have thunk? This game is going to be ugly. It is probably going to be a very low-scoring game, not fun to watch. Maybe it's a good thing I'm not getting my local channels and I only get Red Zone because I probably wouldn't want to watch it even if I wanted to on a local channel. Honestly, it's going to be bad. There's really not a whole lot here for fantasy purposes. There are a couple guys who you think you can obviously play in your lineups and have success. Frank Gore, obviously, for the Colts, is really the only obvious Colt you can play this week. I mean, he's, considering who's under center. Until Andrew Luck comes back, the receiving core really is not going to be a strong option. But I'm forced to play T.Y. Hilton in one of my leagues. I have no better options, so I'm kind of stuck with him this week as a result of all the shuffling. But I don't want to get rid of T.Y. Hilton, obviously, but I have no other options because I lost Evans this week. So that kind of put me in a tough spot. So really, Frank Gore is the only Colt that I can really say you can safely start this week. And for the Rams, Todd Gurley at running back should have a big week this week. Again, the Colts' run defense traditionally has been very, very bad, and so he should have a good game. And I'm going to say Sammy Watkins because the Colts, no Vontae Davis in the secondary, dealing with an injury. So the secondary is also going to be very, very suspect in this matchup. And Sammy Watkins could have a chance to really make some big plays. So I think you can rely on him in this matchup as well. But I'm also going to say, speaking of the receivers, Robert Woods also could have a very good game this week. He's not flashy, but he's capable of making a big play every once in a while. And again, if you're in a pinch and need a serviceable wide receiver 3, like you lost a Evans or a Parker or a Landry, Robert Woods could be a guy you pick up on your wire if you have the space and put him in your lineup this week and have a very, very good productive week. I'm also going to say, again, another couple other Rams. Jared Goff, he could have potentially one of his best games this season this week against this Colts defense because the Colts defense sucks. I mean, it honestly really does. And on the other side right now, it's an inept offense because no Andrew Luck. So Goff could really have a decent game this week. To me, this week, he's a serviceable QB2. Never thought I'd say that about Jared Goff, but I am. Serviceable QB2 and a great play if you're in a 2-quarterback league. In a pinch, get Jared Goff. Put him in your lineup. And the Rams defense. Like I said, I'm playing them this week. Great streaming option. Hi, Scott Tolzien. We're going to make your life a living hell. So I think it's a great play this week. Sits, of course, Andrew Luck. Out. Shoulder injury. Out until unknown. Nobody knows, honestly. The media and Twitter need to stop talking about, when's Andrew Luck coming back? Nobody knows. Just say, nobody knows, and move on. Just that's it. I don't want to read any more about when he's coming back or when he's not coming back, okay? I'm done. I don't want to read about it anymore. I'm tired of reading my Twitter, and looking, hey, when's Andrew Luck going to come back? Is he coming back soon? Is he coming back week 6, week 7? Nobody knows. Even Jim Irsay came out and said he might play week 1, he might not. And then, like yesterday or 2 days ago, Ballard comes out and says he's not playing. Finally. But until then, nobody knows. So just shut up about it. Nobody knows when he's coming back until we hear from the Colts somebody in their organization saying that he's coming back. Nobody knows. So just don't prepare to have him in the meantime. But then obviously you're not playing Scott Tolzien in this matchup either. You're not playing him. The Rams are going to wreck him. I just have a feeling the Rams are going to win this game in pretty handy fashion. They're going to make his day a nightmare. So I don't recommend him for fantasy purposes either. I can't recommend any Colts wide receiver unless you're stuck with them, like with me with T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton without Andrew Luck is a struggle. So that to me was, I think in the history that Luck hasn't played with Hilton. Hilton has like 3 career catches for 54 yards. Not exactly pretty. So yeah, it's not great. It's not ideal. And I'm gonna have a rough week with Ty, but I have no other options, so I'm stuck. Philip Dorsetti's a bust anyway. The Colts just traded Dante Moncrief away for Jacoby Brissett. And I'm like, and one of my friends, coworkers at work, was talking about the stupid trade that the Colts made yesterday. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me, Chris Ballard? What the heck are you thinking? I understand that you need quarterback depth, and that's something I'm going to address on the next episode of ATSD too. Oh, don't worry. I'm going to have a full rant on that, on the stupid decisions the Colts are making when it comes to the quarterback position. Believe me, I'm going to save that for ATSD. But it's irritatingly frustrating what Chris Ballard is doing to this team right now. I understand Jacoby Brissett is a nice player, and he thrived, and when he played in New England when Brady was out with suspension, he did okay. But that's New England. That's a totally different system with different players. This is Indy. This is a totally different system. He's never been in before. And I understand you need the quarterback depth, but my gosh, you do it at the expense of one of your better wide receivers. What the beep are you thinking? Don't answer that. You're not thinking. That is incredibly stupid, and I'm just totally blown away. You handed the Pats that deal. Patriots win again. Patriots beat the Colts again. You gave them the better end of that deal. Holy cow. I can't even process that. That is just totally, absolutely stunning. It's just, I can't fathom it. I had a poster from 2016 with his name signed on it, and now it's like I can't even look at it. I can't even look at it. I can't even do it. I can't look at this anymore. I can't even look at it. I can't even do it because that's so irritatingly and annoyingly frustrating. I just totally blows my mind. So you get rid of him. T.Y. Hilton struggles without Luck. Phil Dorsett's a bust. Can't trust Kamar Aiken yet. Don't know what he's going to do in this offense. And I wouldn't play Jack Doyle either. Not without Andrew Luck. Can't do it. Unless you're stuck. Can't do it. Moving on from that, mini rants. Don't worry, the big rant's coming in ATSD episode 9. Spoiler alert. The big rant's coming. And then Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp. He's looked good in the preseason, but he's a rookie. He's a rookie. He's looked good, but he's also dealing with a nagging groin injury as well. I wouldn't trust him just yet until we see him healthy, in-game action to see what he's capable of in this offense. But I like his upside. Seahawks at Packers, 425. Moving from an ugly game with frustrating things to a probably exciting game with always great ramifications. Remember Fail Mary? Yeah, that's what this game was from. These two always seem to have a good game when they meet, whether it's playoffs, whether it's regular season. These two go to war, and it's fun to see, and it's fun for fantasy purposes because there's a lot of guys you really like and that I like in this matchup. Seahawks perspective, Russell Wilson, obviously, the quarterbacks in this game are a must-start. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, you start these guys. They're going to put up big numbers regardless, and I think they're going to have a really good week. Doug Baldwin, the number one receiver in Seattle, yes, is a must-start, set it, forget it. And Jimmy Graham at tight end is obviously a must-start play. But for the Packers, you can start a lot of these guys. Rodgers, of course. Ty Montgomery at running back. What a transition for him last year. With all the injuries that was happening in the Green Bay backfield at running back, and Ty Montgomery, who normally is a wide receiver, steps in and becomes a running back and tears it up. And I had Ty Montgomery last year on my fantasy team, and oh my gosh, reaped the rewards greatly from that. So that was huge. You play him. I also like Jamal Williams, the rookie, but in PPR leagues, again, because he's going to be that third down weapon back. He might eventually get more touches in the offense from Montgomery, but for now, he's going to be the main guy. Montgomery is, but Williams is going to get, I think, a lot of third down looks, so it was a good play in PPR leagues. The two main receivers, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, they've come on strong. You start these two guys as well. And I'm going to even say that Martellus Bennett, we know Aaron Rodgers loves throwing to his tight ends. He makes advantage of them. The Packers didn't get Martellus Bennett for no reason. They're going to use him. So you definitely start Martellus Bennett as well. The only other start I'm going to mention in this game for the Seahawks is Paul Richardson. Yeah, surprising. But hear me out because Tyler Lockett is still recovering from that horrific knee and leg injury he suffered last season. So Richardson is going to reap, I think, a lot of benefit from that. And he's pretty much now the number 2 receiver by default. In a pinch, you could do worse as a number 3 fantasy wide receiver. So I like Richardson's upside. I think you can use him in this matchup if you're in a pinch as a number 3 wide receiver. But the sits, the Seahawks running backs, look, this is a headache. This is a clear fantasy nightmare RBBC, running back by committee. This is not going to work. We don't know yet who is going to get the bulk of the work. I'd avoid it altogether, but if you absolutely had to pick one, Thomas Rawls has the most upside as a very, very risky RB2. Eddie Lacy, what's his role going to be? That's going to be the hard to gauge. Is CJ Prosise still going to have a role? They're more like risky RB3 or flex options only in a pinch. But I would just avoid it altogether until we actually see what this backfield is going to produce. Is anyone going to be a consistent producer in this backfield? For now, I would wait it out and avoid. The Seahawks defense, again, normally a very reliable weekly fantasy option, but not in this matchup, not on the road against a very potent Green Bay offense. In the meantime, keep him on the bench, find a streamer, and a second option. Randall Cobb, gosh, how far he's fallen, and I hate that because I like watching Randall Cobb as a player. He's been surpassing the depth chart. Oh, bless me. Randall Cobb makes me sneeze. He's been so unproductive. He's been surpassing the depth chart. His productivity is it's not what it used to be. It's not there anymore. Nothing really more than a risky wide receiver 3 or 4 at best. Just very, very inconsistent, very frustrating when you have him on a roster and you think he's going to produce for you, and he doesn't because he's so inconsistent. So very, very difficult to predict. And again, I mentioned Tyler Lockett. Until we see him fully recover from that injury, I just can't trust him just yet. See what he brings to the table first. For now, monitor him, leave him on your bench, scout him, do whatever you have to. He still might have a big year in the end, but I wouldn't throw him in the fire right away as a fantasy starter. So just keep him on your bench or in your scout team in the meantime. Panthers at 49ers. This one, I like a lot of the Panthers. I don't like a few of the 49ers. It's kind of like Falcons-Bears. It's kind of like another on paper one-sided matchup. This is going to be, very, very, very rough. So for me, I obviously like a lot of the Panthers in this matchup. Obvious guys, Cam Newton, I like both running backs, Jonathan Stewart and Christian McCaffrey. I like what I've seen from McCaffrey in the preseason. I love his upside. I think he is probably going to be the rookie of the year. I would not be surprised. Maybe even, he might be challenged by Dalvin Cook from Minnesota as well, but I think McCaffrey has the most upside. So I think, he's going to be, he's going to be very, very involved in this offense. Jonathan Stewart's still going to get a lot of touches, but McCaffrey's going to be involved, on the third down plays, maybe even as a wide receiver. He's going to be involved because of that dual threat capability. So I like both running backs in this matchup. Kelvin Benjamin looks like Kelvin Benjamin again. He doesn't look out of shape. He's not injured. He had a great touchdown catch against Miami in the preseason. So he looks like Kelvin Benjamin again. So I think you keep going with him as well. Greg Olsen, one of the more reliable tight ends in the NFL. I have him on my roster this year. You go with him as well. And the Panthers defense, obviously, in this great matchup against a very suspect 49ers offense. The only two 49ers I think you can trust right now as obvious guys are Carlos Hyde at running back, and I'm going to say Pierre Garçon at wide receiver because I think I have Pierre Garçon. I have to start him this week because I lost Mike Evans, but I think he's going to be the number one receiver in this offense, and with a quarterback that's really not that really inept in Brian Hoyer, and he's got Kyle Shanahan as his coach. And last time Pierre Garçon worked with Kyle Shanahan in Washington, big-time numbers. So I think that could happen here again in San Francisco. So I'm really hoping for a big-time production from Pierre Garçon. So I think you can play him this week as well as a solid, at least number 3 option, but certainly with number 2 upside as well. But I'm also going to say you can start Marquise Goodwin. I really like what I've seen in the preseason from him as well, from this track star, speed freak. I really like what I've seen. He's been getting involved a lot in the passing game as well. And because of that, he's at least a low, certainly low in wide receiver 4, but the wide receiver 3 upside certainly is there with Marquise Goodwin. And I think the fact because the Niners are going to throw a lot in this game, I think because of that, you can really look at Marquise Goodwin and have a solid fantasy starter this week. The sits, though, Devin Funchess, the Panthers wide receiver, risky wide receiver 3 or 4 at best. To me, just doesn't get enough targets in the offense. It's all the mouths to feed there. Damiere Byrd, not yet. He earned a spot on the team with a glowing production in preseason. Had a 2-touchdown game against Miami. But let's see what he does when the games count first for recommending him. But I do like his upside going forward. And I mentioned Brian Hoyer. To me, the matchup's a little bit too tough to make Hoyer a legit option. Maybe if you're desperate in a 2-quarterback league, but really that's about it. I don't like the matchup for Brian Hoyer. Sunday night, Monday night games. Giants-Cowboys. This one, we had a couple. We have still one big storyline left, and then one that's kind of cleared itself up. The big one, of course, is in Dallas with Ezekiel Elliott. The question was whether or not he would play this week. Well, his 6-game suspension for violating the personal conduct policy did get upheld, but because of the timing of it, he's still eligible to play on Sunday night. So he's still going to play week 1, but supposedly we're going to have a decision tomorrow on a temporary restraining order, and if Elliott gets it, he continues playing. But if he doesn't, then his suspension begins on week 2. So a lot of storyline and dilemma to go into that. But at least for this week, if you own Ezekiel Elliott, you will have him in your lineup. And you will have him available. So a lot of guys I like in this matchup. For the Giants, obviously, I like Eli Manning. I think you can play him here. He always seems to do well in these big matchups, especially against the Cowboys. So I think you can play him. The other big storyline is Odell Beckham. What's the status of his ankle injury? He hasn't been practicing lately. If he plays, then I think you play Odell Beckham, obviously. But if he doesn't, that's a pretty big loss. So monitor that situation. See where he lands on the injury report tomorrow. If when that comes out, monitor closely the Odell Beckham situation because that would be a big loss for the Giants if they don't have him available for Sunday night. And then I'm going to say again, I mentioned Evan Ingram as one of these young rookie tight ends is going to be utilized quickly. I think he's going to be. So I think Evan Ingram is a very good play if you're in a pinch at tight end. The Cowboys usually know who to start in this offense. These are reliable guys. Dak Prescott at quarterback. You're going to have Zeke Elliott for this week. You play him. Dez Bryant, obviously. Cole Beasley, I like in PPR leagues only. Standard leagues very much a risk because he's targeted occasionally, but not as often as you'd like. So I think more of a PPR strong option is a number 2, more of a number 3 in standard leagues, and Jason Witten at tight end, one of the more reliable tight ends again in the NFL. I'm also going to say they'll start 2 other guys. You can start Terrence Williams for the Cowboys at wide receiver. You could do worse as a low-end 2 or high-end 3 with upside. He's going to get his share of targets in this offense as well. And I'm going to say Brandon Marshall for the Giants. Look, he'll be a nice wide receiver 2 anyway, but if Beckham doesn't play, he becomes a must-start 1 because he's going to get the lion's share of the targets. So he's a target machine. He's been a target machine wherever he's been, whether it was Chicago, whether it was the Jets. He's become a target eater wherever he goes. And Eli's going to love throwing him the ball as much as he does to Beckham because kind of like Beckham, he goes up and gets it. He gets the ball. So I think he's going to be a very solid start this week. Sits Darren McFadden, obviously, because he only has value if Zeke's suspension doesn't get stayed or changed. This week, it won't be an issue. So McFadden, you keep stashed, you keep under wire, you sit him. But again, depending on the result of that restraining order, we'll see what happens with his suspension going forward. Because if that 6-game suspension then does start with week 2, then Darren McFadden becomes an immediate fantasy play. So keep Darren McFadden monitored. Otherwise, more of a risky, desperate RB3 play in PPR only. Sterling Shepard, the Giants wide receiver, to me just doesn't get enough targets to be fantasy relevant, so I'd keep him away. Giants running backs. No, can't at this point. Not until one emerges. Would you really trust Paul Perkins, Shane Vereen, Orleans Darkwa, or Wayne Gallman in fantasy? No? Oh, good. Didn't think so. I was afraid I was going to have to slap you through the screen for a minute. Avoid. Group of scrubs ain't worth it. Finally, real quick, the Monday night games. Big first one, Saints-Vikings, a.k.a. the Adrian Peterson revenge game. He's already come out and said, I'm going to stick it to my former team. Ooh, I'm excited to see that. Get your popcorn ready. Ow, paper cut. Hope not. That kind of hurt. So get your popcorn for that one. Obvious plays here. Saints, Drew Brees at quarterback, obviously. Even though the Saints don't play very well outdoors, you can't sit Drew Brees, obviously, if you have him. Mark Ingram, running back, yes, you play him. Michael Thomas, top wide receiver. Kobe Fleener, I'll say, is a good play this week. I think Kobe Fleener is going to get more work. Last year was his first season in New Orleans, was kind of up and down. Was involved sometimes, then he wasn't. I think this year could be a breakout year for Kobe Fleener. I think he's going to be more involved in the offense. I think you can start him for the foreseeable future. For the Vikings, top 2 receivers, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. Love these guys. I think they're obvious right now, must-start guys because they get involved in this offense. Kyle Rudolph, one of the more reliable tight ends in the NFL, again, especially a touchdown machine in the red zone. Yes, you start him. And I'm going to say you start the Vikings defense this week because, again, the Saints outdoors usually aren't as good as when they play at home in the Superdome. So I think the Vikings defense will have opportunities to make some stops, create some turnovers, maybe get an interception or 2, make some plays, and maybe keep that Saints offense in check. So I think they're still an okay start this week. I'm also going to say you can start a lot of guys in this matchup that normally you might not. Sam Bradford is normally not a great fantasy play, but as we all know, also the Saints secondary is one of the most forgiving units in the NFL. They give up tons of points to quarterbacks. So to me, a nice low-end QB1 this week and a great play, especially if you're in a 2-quarterback league as well. Dalvin Cook. Love this guy. I'm usually not a big fan of playing rookies right out of the box, but he's been special all preseason long. He's earned a starting job now over Latavius Murray, who's oft injured. I think he's a good bet for solid RB2 production, if not RB1. Certainly, the upside is there with Dalvin Cook. For the Saints, Adrian Peterson, he's come out and said he's going to make them pay. That's good enough for me. Even though Ingram gets the bulk of the work, I still think Peterson has low-end RB2 value, but but especially in PPR leagues because I feel like that's going to be where his role is going to be. And Ted Ginn. Willie Snead is suspended. Willie Snead is suspended for the first 3 games of the season. Normally a very reliable second option in the Saints passing game. But he's suspended for the first 3 games. So now Ted Ginn steps up and becomes the number 2 receiver. His stock rises. Strong candidate for wide receiver 3 value, but certainly the low-end wide receiver 2 upside is there for him to get a ton of targets and opportunities in this offense with Willie Snead suspended for those first 3 games. So you can definitely right now utilize Ted Ginn. The only sits I have for this one are Latavius Murray. Unless you need really a desperate PPR play, I can't really recommend there's anything more than a risky RB3. Backfield is Dalvin Cooks. It's his job to lose at this point. And then Laquan Treadwell has kind of been a disappointment for Minnesota. Not until we see a level of production from him, really. I like his upside, but hasn't given us the goods yet. So I can't really recommend him until he steps up. And finally, the last game Monday night, the late game at 10:20, the LA Chargers, yes, it's a thing now, at the Broncos. And again, the big storyline with this one is the Broncos quarterback situation. Obviously now Trevor Siemian has the starting job, but he won the job over Paxton Lynch, and they re-signed Brock Osweiler. Are you serious, Denver? You went from having Peyton Manning to having Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, and Brock Osweiler, a guy you wanted to get rid of, sent to Houston, and then Houston really couldn't make him any better, and Houston wanted to get rid of him and his contract so badly, they practically handed him to Cleveland and said, here you go, take him off our hands. And then Cleveland said, oh, no, he's not even good enough to play for us. And we drafted Deshaun Kaiser, and now he's our starter. Bye, Brock, and then said bye-bye. And now he's back in Denver again. Oh, my gosh. You want to talk about the wheel of misfortune for Brock Osweiler. Obvious starts in this game for the Chargers. Your main 3. Phillip Rivers at quarterback, Melvin Gordon at running back, Antonio Gates at tight end. As long as those 3 are healthy, they're reliable, you start those guys. For the Broncos, I never thought I'd say this, but C.J. Anderson is an obvious play. Yeah, he finally learned not to suck. How great is that? He finally can actually be a capable running back for once. So C.J. Anderson finally is a must start. Demaryius Thomas, as long as he's healthy. The groin is an issue right now. As long as he plays, you play Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. Those are really the only guys that I can recommend as obvious plays. Other than that, with the start, no one else of note. There's really no one else. I mean, this is going to be Saints. It's kind of like flip-flopped, okay? Normally you would think Chargers-Broncos would be the appetizer and Saints-Vikings be the main course. Well, Saints-Vikings is kind of like the awesome dessert you have before the dinner, and then you get the dinner with Chargers-Broncos, and it's disappointing. It's like undercooked, raw, like kind of bad. Gives you food poisoning. The pain in your stomach. That's Chargers-Broncos because this won't be a pretty game. Sit Trevor Siemian. I think we can all agree that situation is junk. Sit Jamal Charles, unless you're really desperate in a PPR league. Nothing more than an RB4 at best. Virgil Green at tight end. Another one's really underutilized. Don't touch him. And really, the Chargers wide receivers, the secondary in Denver we know is tough. With Chris Harris and Talib, we know that that's tough. They did just let T.J. Ward go, but still have those guys as strong options. Keenan Allen might be the safest play, but for me, because of this tough matchup, he's only a number 2 receiver in my eyes this week. I wouldn't trust Tyrell Williams or Travis Benjamin really against this tough secondary. All right. That is it for week 1, guys. That is it for the preview. Thank you guys so much for your patience, for your understanding. I know it took a long time for me to get this up. We had, delays, on Tuesday, and then I'm going to try to keep this as consistent as possible. I want to do this on Wednesday nights, but yesterday I had another project to work on. We had dark clouds outside. The weather wasn't cooperating, so that's why I had to move it to today. But I'm going to try as much as possible to make this a weekly thing on Wednesday nights. So the tentative schedule, and I posted to the discussion page, ATSD episode 9 will be next week, next Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. So that'll be next Monday. And then that Wednesday, we'll have the week 2 preview of the FFSR, recapping week 1 and then heading into week 2. And then the week 3 preview will be that following Wednesday on September 20th, same time, 7 o'clock. So I'm going to try to keep this as consistent as possible. I want this to be on a consistent day because on the weeks when I'm doing ATSD as well, with the two videos per week, it's going to be a little bit of a time crunch. So I got to prep as much as possible for both shows. So keep that in mind. So thank you guys so much again for your patience, your understanding, your views, subscribing. You guys are awesome. You guys rock. If you have any lineup concerns, any questions at all, are you debating with something this week because of the cancellation of the Bucs-Dolphins game? Who's out there on your wire that you think might want to pick up? Feel free to hit it up in the comments below. I will try to get to as many questions as I can. I look at them all throughout the week. I check my Google, Gmail, YouTube. I always check it, see if I have any comments or anything. So feel free to post your lineup dilemmas this week. And let's start the season strong. Let's go out there and get a victory in week 1 to start the season off right. Thank you guys, and we will see you next week for 2 videos next week. Episode 9 of According to Spiky Dash on Monday, and then on Wednesday next week, the 13th, the week 2 preview of the Fantasy Football Stock Report for your league, your team, your game, your home. God bless and good luck.